From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Coming up on AgDay, year-round learning.
I'm Betsy Gibbon. One Indiana ag class is learning by doing, taking care of cattle. That story ahead of the show.
Plus, flooding continues to set records across the Midwest.
We're not going to have a crop this year.
As markets pull back on planting progress.
And I'll be honest with you, the numbers that I believe the market is assuming at this point are far from where we'll end up.
AgDay, presented by the all-new Chevy Silverado, the strongest, most advanced Silverado ever.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Drier weather and perceived planting progress dragging markets lower at midweek. Dust is flying in places like Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana, where farmers are way behind in planting compared to historical averages. Now, a small window of dry weather helping farmers get into their fields this week, and while progress won't be fully recognized until next week's crop progress report, the perceived planting pace putting markets on notice Tuesday night into Wednesday. Bill Biederman with agmarket.net joining us from our remote studios in Kansas City. And Bill, it feels like traders are saying the weather market is over.
No, far from over, Clinton. All we're doing is we're just adjusting prices to account for some South America business that Smithfield bought and some shifting of demand to South America from the U.S. shores by Mexico and maybe a few others. This is just an adjustment. As long as that supply situation is still unknown and possibly moving lower, I don't think this market is over. And I'll be honest with you, the numbers that I believe the market is assuming at this point are far from where we'll end up.
All right, thanks, Bill. The record slow pace of corn and soybean plantings are expected to force some key changes in the June 10th USDA WASDE report. Analysts say if USDA cuts corn planting and yield forecast, history indicates it takes a significant percentage reduction from corn usage of at least 35 to 40% of the production cut. While planters are rolling hard, there are still millions of acres that may go unplanted this year. Take a look at this mobile pulse poll from our partners over at Farm Journal. They asked nearly 1,000 farmers on how much of your corn acreage do you plan to file prevented plant claims. More than half say none. 14% say they'll file on 10% of their ground. 13% say 25% of their corn acres will go to prevented plant, and a fifth of farmers say 50% or more of acres will be prevented plant.
48% saying that they are going to claim prevent plant on some of their acres is very telling of the struggles that farmers have had across the corn belts.
USDA will share its expectations for the 2019 crop in its next supply and demand report, which comes out June 10th. Some of those prevented plant acres will be along the nation's waterways. Major historic flooding is expected again this week as concerns continue to focus on the Arkansas, Mississippi, and Missouri rivers. Tyne Morgan's tracking the rising waters along the Missouri. She joins us from Carroll County in the northwestern part of the state.
Yeah, Clint, it's been a roller coaster year for farmers all across the country this year. But for farmers here in Missouri, after battling drought last year, they thought this year maybe they would rebound and even produce a record crop. But instead, hopes of even producing a crop at all this year were washed away in minutes.
I had probably 80% of my corn planted, and it was up with a stand. There was a little bit that was on the low side, but that we didn't get planted. But
so now the 80% that you planted, how much is underwater?
Oh, about 90%, I'd say. And we're not figuring we're not going to have a crop this year, so.
This aerial view shows thousands of acres of fertile farmland now suffocated by the raging river.
That's where it broke originally to fill that in to get that secondary levee, which saved it for a couple of days. That was solid trees through there, which now are out in his field. They're going to have to go pick up, as you can see them out there.
Todd Creason farms in the area and took us around for a bird's eye view that showed thousands of sandbags first placed in March, a barrier that held the river back for months.
If they would have been able to keep it down below 32 feet, it would have worked.
3 levees in an 18-mile stretch are broken, leaving farmland vulnerable to floodwaters all year, a reality that Wheeler and other area farmers are trying to come to terms with.
My farm is a century farm this year, so it's supposed to be kind of a celebratory year for me. So it'll be one we remember for sure.
And Clinton, as you can see right here, this field was planted before the floodwaters came in, but it came in, the stands were pretty good in this particular field, but as you can see, it just suffocated the crop and just uprooted it. And so this field that was planted, one of the few fields that was actually able to be planted this year, they won't be able to harvest and won't be able to plant again because it's so late. Clinton.
Meanwhile, the Arkansas River continues to crest at record levels. On Wednesday, 57 flood gauges remained at major or record flood stages. Vice President Mike Pence is pledging to rebuild parts of Oklahoma damaged by the flooding. The vice president and his wife toured Tulsa area neighborhoods swamped after the swollen Arkansas River left its banks. Damage extends downstream into Arkansas following those heavy spring rains. The Arkansas River is slowly cresting.
I think you can see here the level of devastation that's associated with it, the loss of personal effects, the potential for loss of life, and but to be here, to be among people that have endured this and are now emptying out their homes, all their earthly possessions, but still have the strength, the resilience, the smiles on their faces. It's Oklahoma's inspiring the nation.
Here's another perspective of the flooding via the air. Cindy Clausen has that in today's Crop Comments. Cindy.
Well, Clinton, my friend Bruce Thomas took these pictures on a flight from Kansas City to St. Louis. Now, this is the view from 20,000 feet of the devastating flooding on the Missouri River. And this is from mid-Missouri to the outskirts of St. Louis. Now, Bruce said 1993 flooding comes to mind and how this benchmark may be surpassed if more extreme rainfall events occur in the days to come. I remember being in St. Louis in '93, and yes, not a good picture. We certainly do not want that to happen again. Let's take a look at our wind speed forecast, and most of the heavier winds that we're going to see today are going to be out in the western parts of the United States, as you can see, especially over from Montana back into Nevada. Quieting down a little bit into the overnight hours, stretching more so into the northern plains. We pick up again just a little bit further to the east as we head through our Friday. Stay tuned. I'll have your national forecast coming up, but for now, here are some hometown temps.
Introducing Farm Journal TV, on demand 24/7. AgDay, Machinery Pete TV. U.S. Farm Report on your phone and tablet. Download the Farm Journal TV mobile app today.
An update to a story we first told you about in April. Undercover activists releasing the video shot on Fair Oaks Farms, the nation's largest dairy. The footage shows workers abusing young calves at one of its calf raising facilities. According to owner Mike McCluskey, he says he's disgusted and takes full responsibility for the actions seen in the footage. Upon closer review, McCluskey says it appears 5 individuals were involved in the abuse. Of the 5, 4 were employees and 1 was a contract truck driver. He says even prior to the video coming out, 3 of the employees were released due to abuse allegations. The 4th has since been fired, and the contract truck driver is never allowed on the property again. Now, McCluskey says all of the footage will be turned over to authorities for possible prosecution. The activists are calling on Coca-Cola to drop their partnership with Fair Oaks on Fairlife milk. Now, McCluskey says in a statement on Facebook, quote, the employees featured in the video exercised a complete and total disregard for the documented training that all employees go through to ensure the comfort, safety, and well-being of our animals, adding that despite our thorough training, employee onboarding procedures and overall commitment to animal welfare needs improvement. He says he's reached out to the group that released the video, but has yet to hear back from them. Mexican officials meeting with key members of the administration in Washington Wednesday, hoping to avoid an increase in tariffs on goods from Mexico. The Mexican team sitting down with Vice President Mike Pence and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. They promised to show evidence of how they're addressing the migrant crisis. Now, President Trump has threatened to impose a 5% tariff on all goods from Mexico if they don't do more to help ease the flow of migrants. Mexican officials say the solution requires a common vision, adding that the people coming to the U.S. are not Mexican. Roughly 85% are from Central America. The president's threats come as members of Congress push to finalize a free trade agreement between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. Some feel these new tariff threats only complicate approval. Longtime Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley believes the GOP may not need to get involved, saying talks are making progress.
These talks will probably come to a resolution so that tariffs aren't needed. And so I don't think we have to deal with what the GOP in the United States Senate says.
The U.S. Chamber of Commerce says Texas would be hit hardest by the proposed tariffs on Mexican products, followed by Michigan, California, Illinois, and Ohio. The soybean market went from double-digit gains to losses. We look at the overall fundamentals coming up in analysis, and a different spin to ag in the classroom as one school raises livestock for a class.
Closed captioning is brought to you by BASF. Grow smart with BASF. We create chemistry.
Mark Fite with International Agribusiness Group, our guest today. Mark, let's talk about the soybean market because the dynamics there are different than they are for corn, and we've seen some of that over the last week or so. Longer term, definitely.
Yes, so soybeans a whole different story than corn, although they're connected because soybeans tend to be the anchor right now and right. keeping corn from getting higher. We believe from a planting perspective, if we don't plant corn, we're going to have to plant a lot of beans, and the market will incentivize us, no matter if it's into July, to get those beans planted, and then it gives South America the opportunity to make up for corn.
Okay.
So from a pricing standpoint, you still got to look at pricing beans with calls, and there's a lot of uncertainty here about planting because of the MFP payment.
Right.
We don't know what that is,
exactly.
how that's going to work. The default feels like we should plan it to get that payment. ASF is a huge deal. I think that's a much bigger problem going forward.
Yeah, talk about that dynamic and what that means for soybeans.
So what we believe is a problem is probably bigger than what we know right now. We're talking about probably a 20% reduction in the hog herd, and I think that's minimum. We certainly believe it could be bigger.
Sure.
If you had to handicap it, we would take it bigger. And that's had a bigger impact on demand for soybeans, and probably, and I don't think we've seen the full impact yet, and it's at least a year or two out. We've got too many beans in the world, and it's going to keep us from building supplies of just about anything.
Yeah, and so that's going to kind of, at some point we get past this weather market and these weather decisions, that becomes one of the major driving factors, you think, for soybeans?
That's still the problem for soybeans is where's the Chinese demand and how do we all adjust to that?
Yeah, well, it's a dynamic, changing situation as always. Appreciate it, Mark. Thank you for being here. We'll be back with more Ag Day in just a minute.
To talk to Mark, give him a call at 248-715-9222 or send him an email at mfight@iaggroup.com.
Welcome back to Ag Day. Here, meteorologist Cindy Clausen. And Cindy, that storm in the Gulf Coast area, boy, that's bringing a lot of rain.
It really is, and that's going to be the focus over the next couple of days as we see a lot of heavier rainfall there. Let's take a look. You can see that low pressure system in the eastern part of Texas, but we're going to see all that moisture coming up, especially in the central Gulf Coast states. Further to the north, we've got a front that's draped through the Corn Belt, but most of the moisture is going to be in the southeastern United States as high pressure starts to settle in towards the Great Lakes area. We'll have to watch out for some rain in the northwest as well, and some of those high elevations may still be seeing a few snowflakes. Heading into the overnight hours we go, and we see that low moving slowly to the east, and we're going to be seeing those showers and thunderstorms basically in the Gulf Coast states, but all along this cold front as well as it moves over to the eastern Atlantic states, the mid-Atlantic states. High pressure kind of holding strong though in the Great Lakes area. Heading into your Friday, we see pretty much the same conditions. Rainfall, especially in the southeastern quarter of the country, but also in the northwest as well. As far as that precipitation amount, the past 24 hours really has been in the southeast and into much of the eastern seaboard as well. Adding on the next 24 hours, look at the heavy rain that we're expecting in the southeastern part of the country. Some of the areas that we were talking about earlier on with the really bad flooding, part of the Missouri, Mississippi River, Arkansas River and such, looking at some more heavy rain there. Temperature wise, we're still pretty warm in the nation's midsection, some mid-90s down in Texas. The cool spots off into the Pacific Northwest, but most everybody is seeing at least fairly normal temperatures, if not above normal temperatures. Getting into the overnight hours, we'll see those lows very mild, very muggy in the southeastern United States with all that moisture there, and a bit cool as you see those 50s in the northwest and in parts of the northeast as well. And heading into tomorrow, similar temperatures. We'll see a lot of 80s and 70s right on up through the plains, 50s in the northwest, 70s and 80s in the eastern part of the country. A quick look at the jet stream will show that, yeah, we see all that cool air in place. We've got a trough in the Pacific Northwest. We also have a bit of a trough in the Northeast as well. And we do have a weak trough, and that's what's kind of helping to drive that low pressure system down in the southern United States. Watch those as we get into next week as we see another trough, couple of troughs entering the northeastern parts of the United States. So look for some cooler temperatures there and perhaps some wet weather conditions as well. That's your national forecast. Now let's check on the weather where you live. Lewistown, Montana, scattered showers and thunderstorms with a high of 83 degrees. Montello, Wisconsin, mostly sunny for you with a high of 77. And Marion, Alabama, cooler with showers and storms, high of 79.
A wild grazing lawsuit goes back to court. We have the latest and a new twist to farm to fork. Ag students put beef on the cafeteria's menu raised from the school's farm.
Drover's Report is sponsored by Corteva Agriscience, Agriculture Division of Dow DuPont, your partner in range and pasture productivity.
Profits for cattle feeders and beef packers are moving in opposite directions as spreads widen this week. The latest Sterling Beef Profit Tracker says the spread is moving quickly. Cash-fed cattle prices are holding steady at $115 during the week of May 31st. Average cattle feeding profits remain positive, but dropping to $28 per head. Packers seeing their margins improve, now at $236 per head. Cash profit margins for cow-calf producers in 2019 will average $153 per cow. The legal troubles for ranchers Stephen and Dwight Hammond of Oregon continues. Now, you might remember the men were pardoned last year by President Trump following convictions in 2012 for setting fire to federal lands. Their grazing permits had since been restored. Now a federal judge is issuing a temporary restraining order prohibiting grazing cattle on 4 federal allotments.
3 environmental groups have sued the U.S. Interior Department because Ryan Zinke issued the order to give the Hammonds their grazing permits back on his last day in office in January. The environmental groups now are claiming that allowing the Hammonds to graze that land would cause irreparable harm to the land, and the sage grouse are in nesting season now.
Henderson says the Interior Department says the land needed to be grazed because it was a fire hazard. A court hearing is scheduled for later this month. School may be out for summer, but the assignment isn't over for one class raising cattle on school grounds in the country. Next. School is wrapping up for the year, but for one Indiana school district, the work isn't over. There's an assignment for its students that lasts year-round to spark interest in agriculture. AgDay's Betsy Gibbons shows us how it's putting its own flair on the farm-to-fork movement.
You have to follow criteria for the assignment.
Class is in session at McConaughey Middle School in Bunker Hill, Indiana. And as the saying goes, Mr. Cinnamon's morning ag students are learning by doing.
We currently have 6 breeding females. Then we have 4 head that are being fed out.
This class doesn't just learn about agriculture in the classroom, they actually step outside and take care of cattle.
The program is called School to Table, where the students are the farmers and the farm is adjacent to the school, a way to spark interest in ag business, science, and production.
We built the fence here at school. The kids drove the posts, put in the steeples, ran the hot wire.
A fairly new program thanks to community, USDA, and other grants from ag companies. Families donating cattle, while others paid for by a grant.
Today, every period has gone outside to do some work. We needed to clean out the water tank. We needed to scrape off the concrete floor. And so that's kind of the day in, day out is just checking on and raising the cattle.
The program has its own spin to the farm-to-fork movement. Some of the beef makes its way on the menu at the middle school lunch cafeteria. A mini scope of feeding the world, just like with regular ag production.
And as we progress, we're going to get into more of the production side of it and the research where we can, actually calculate rate of gain.
Cinnamon says the opportunity is giving kids who did not grow up in ag to see what it's about.
I think it's a great experience for someone like myself since I've never really had any experience with livestock at all. And it's just a lot of fun seeing the whole other side of the spectrum.
And it's a learning experience for the ag kids too.
It's a lot different than pigs because in our barns, there's like just a system. You just got to press a button, feed, and water come down. But here we actually get to bring the hose over to the container and fill it up, and we get to actually have bags of feed and just put it in.
Valuable lessons not always taught at school, accessible in and outside this classroom. Reporting in Bunker Hill, Indiana, I'm Betsy Gibbon.
All right, thanks, Betsy, and that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in, spent part of your day with us. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day out there in farm country.